Get in here, Brandon.
Oh, yeah. Hi, I'm Brandon.
And I'm Kobe.
And we are recording our podcast right now and sharing it with you guys live and talking about codependency. So, you want to go ahead and get started?
Here we go, guys.
We're so professional.
Okay, so today we're going to talk about a dirty word in recovery.
Oh, boy.
And
here it is.
So hang in there when I say it, and please listen through. And so we're talking about codependency today. And the reason I say it's a dirty word is it's been turned into that in the recovery community in some ways. And let me explain why, and then we'll get into what it is and why we need to talk about it.
It's a dirty word. I love it.
So when I started doing this years ago, clients would come in and the spouse or the betrayed would be told that they're a codependent. You're a co-addict, you're a codependent. Basically, you're just as sick as he is, and you need help and treatment just as much as he does.
Oh my gosh, talk about like throwing it at the betrayed. Oh my gosh.
Right. And so after a while, there was almost a backlash of like, and a woman by the name of Barbara Steffens wrote a really good book called Your Sexually Addicted Spouse, and she just disputed codependency, and that, coupled with some other professionals coming out and saying it's not codependency, it's betrayal trauma, it led to this kind of feeling of we don't even talk about codependency, we don't bring it up because it's not codependency, it's betrayal trauma. And because saying you're codependent or this is codependency kind of it
What was the connotation of codependency that made it such a dirty word?
Well, I think it just sent a little bit of a message to the spouse that, hey, this is your fault.
To the betrayed.
To the betrayed,
okay.
Yeah. That, hey, this is your fault.
Which you're already in that position, so...
Yeah, going into treatment, you're going in with all this shame and all this fear, and then the therapist tells you, well, it's because you're codependent, you know? And
oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so it makes sense why... You know, they're coming in with trauma, and then they're being traumatized by being told that, hey, you're a problem and you're to blame for this. And so then codependency kind of, with some therapists and some people who treat betrayal trauma, became this dirty word of, look, we don't even bring up codependency because it's not that, because we don't want the spouse to feel like, or the betrayed to feel like we're blaming them in any way. And what I think is actually true is that codependency is real, and betrayal trauma does lead to being more codependent.
Absolutely.
Right?
I agree.
So let's talk about what codependency is. And so I want to throw it out to you guys first and just see what your understanding of codependency is and how it's played out in your guys' relationship.
Well, I know for sure that my mom was like codependent, and she modeled that behavior. And I only know that because in January of this year, I read Melody Beattie's Codependent No More, because I gave Ashlyn the power to determine how I felt, and
lots of other people,
and yeah, loads of other people in the work environment, family, etc. And so I was like, okay, done with this. And so I started reading the book, and it was so clear to me that it was modeled by my mom, and that I was modeling it to my kids, that I was modeling in the home. And that's simply stated, that's kind of how I understood it to be, is I was giving the power to determine my emotions to someone or some other circumstance.
Yes.
And the way that the turning point for me after reading that was I was at home, and Ellie, our 6-year-old, was crying. And I went because Lucy had a friend over and was playing, and I said, why are you crying? And she said, I got hurt, and Lucy and her friend didn't come help me when I was hurt. And I said, okay, done. Like, we're no more of this. That's totally codependent behavior. She learned that from me. This is all over. Like, we're taking our power back. And so from then on, Ellie and I developed this codependent, like, hand jive, like handshake. Literally.
We're not being codependent.
Okay, we're going to take our power back. Here's a handshake that we're going to do.
We lost our power.
Exactly,
get it back.
Right.
Exactly. And that made a big difference, because then all of a sudden that's like a conversation now.
Yeah,
in our
our
house.
home is like, does someone have your power? And it's like, yes, they took my power.
That's awesome.
So that's how it looked. That's how I learned it. That's how I taught it, and that's how I'm trying to take it back.
So
right or wrong, I don't know. But
let's explain just a little bit more somebody taking your power. Like, what does that look like? What does that mean?
I can't be happy right now because he's doing something that makes me feel whatever.
So your happiness is
determined by his actions.
him. Yeah.
Instead of saying, I don't like what you're doing, but for me, I can find happiness and self-worth and all of that through myself.
Yeah. So if he's a big time jerk and he's doing all this stuff, you still can find, you still have power to choose how you feel, regardless of what he's doing.
Yeah. And vice versa for me, when Ashlyn would go to shame, and this is all before I knew this, but when Ashlyn would go to shame, then and she would either withdraw or she would get angry or whatever the case was, then I would let that influence my behavior. Like it would influence my mood, and so I would be like the wounded little puppy who'd been kicked.
Right.
I'd be the victim, and I'd crawl in the corner and figuratively suck my thumb and lick my wounds, and I would eventually act out in an effort to help me feel better, if you will.
Right. And what you're describing is when you're codependent, it prevents you from being able to empathize and connect to somebody else because
it's all about me.
You just described it. She's feeling shame. She's hurt. She's right. And then you
turn it back.
You turn it back into yourself. It's all about you.
You alluded to this in a couple of podcasts ago when we talked about this that it could be one of the most selfish things is
trying to fix it.
Trying to fix it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And this is very related to that because that's how it was for me. What you just described.
Right.
It was a totally selfish thing, but I was completely blind.
Right.
And entirely unaware that I was doing this.
But okay, so I trained under a therapist who was.
You're off the camera.
She's very much. I trained under her, and she was very much don't be codependent, and she would say, do not let another person affect you in any way. If they punch you in the face, if they do this or that, don't get connected to them and give them your power, right? And to some degree, this is not healthy because we as human beings are attached to people for good reason.
Yeah.
So if Ashlyn did something that created an emotion inside of you, that's a good thing because you are connected to her, right?
Feel that,
right? But it doesn't have anything to do with your self-worth. And so you'll feel sad or lonely or scared or angry about something that she does. That's okay. That's normal.
Okay.
But if your well-being and your okayness is dependent upon how she feels, then you're codependent. So it's not healthy to say, look, I don't care at all about what you do and how you feel, because then you're going over into independency. So, and independency is, look, I'm apathetic, I don't care, do whatever you want to do. That's not a healthy relationship.
That makes sense.
And so codependency is, I'm way too connected to how you feel. I'm scared of how you feel, so I got to manipulate you, and I got to hide things, and that's codependency.
Okay.
So you want to meet in the middle. You guys know what that's called, right? Interdependency.
Totally.
Right? Where you have healthy attachment, you're totally in tune with each other's emotions and connected to those emotions, but at the same time you can have boundaries and not be so connected that it affects your self-worth.
So it'd be okay for me to acknowledge, okay, this is the effect that if Ash went to shame and she, called you a name or whatever, it would be okay for me to say, okay, so you called me a name, and the effect was I just felt kind of pained. I felt the sting of that comment, but I'm calm.
Doesn't define me.
Doesn't define me. I'm not a douche,
right?
Or whatever it is, right? And Ashlyn loves that word, but I'm still me. I'm here. Right. I'm not going to let that hijack me in a sense because that word doesn't define me.
That's a great example. If I went home today and my wife were just overwhelmed and shut down, and I walked in and she was just kind of rude to me, right? I could codependently get really angry back at her, fight with her, storm out, right? I could independently be like, oh, whatever. she's doing what she's doing.
Yeah.
I'm not getting acknowledged that she is where she is, right? Interdependency would be, oh, something's going on with her. I want to connect to her, but I'm also going to hold some boundaries. If she starts yelling names at me, or then I'm going to say this doesn't work.
Yeah.
But I also care about who you are and where you're at.
Totally.
Right?
So that was me as the addict, and I can say probably across the board that most guys that I work with who are addicts in some way, to some degree, and as a rule, it's not a small degree, are codependent.
Yes, no question.
Whether that's modeled and learned behavior, or it just evolves because of being
it's
in a
really
relationship.
common though in an addictive relationship though, right?
So addiction is an attachment disorder, and so there's attachment problems in the relationship.
Okay.
And yes, I would say all of us are codependent to a degree.
All of us.
Like everybody is codependent, and we get too wrapped up in other people's feelings at times. But an addict who is already feeling a lot of shame and already very affected by somebody else and triggered into their shame by that is very codependent. And so it's what's interesting that you're saying this, Kobe, because the betrayed has been the one that has been like pinpointed as like, look, you're the codependent here.
Yeah.
Another thing that goes along with codependency that they talk a lot about in therapy is enabling. And so what that is you give up your boundaries in the relationship because you're codependent. You're worried about their feelings, so you don't feel like you can be honest. And so when you give up those boundaries, then you'll enable that person to continue to do
Cycle.
yeah,
Cycle.
yeah, crappy behavior in the relationship, right? So, I worked with years ago. This is kind of an extreme example of codependency.
Okay.
I worked with a woman who came to our program. The court had mandated that she did treatment for heroin addiction because she was buying massive amounts of heroin, and she'd never done heroin in her life. Yeah.
Wow.
And so talking to her, she was buying heroin for her husband because she wanted to feel important, and she wanted to feel of value, and she wanted to control how much heroin he got. And so she got busted buying all this heroin. She'd never done heroin. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, you can see the codependency there.
Yeah.
She's giving up her truth for him. She's giving up her. She's going to court and has a legal charge because of it. Man. So that's an example of codependency.
Okay.
But
so how could that look like in the case of the betrayed, as far as sex addiction and so forth, for the betrayed?
I could rattle off so many examples.
Can you think of one?
Can I give you my example?
Yeah, go for it.
You tell me if this is wrong. So I remember as I had gotten into group therapy and working through betrayal trauma, my therapist said, hey, I want you to pick a word that describes you and is empowering. And I'd always struggled, like, I am not enough. I'm just not enough. Like, I was successful in all these other things. I was confident in who I was around other people, but in my own relationship, I was like, I'm like down here, and I just don't measure up. And she was like, no, you need something more empowering. And I was like, no, that's my problem. Like, I feel like I am not enough. And for me, so I have that necklace to remind me, like, I am enough. I think for me, I completely based our 15 years of marriage on his actions of where my value was.
This is a perfect example of codependency, right? She was connected to you, and you're struggling with addiction, so you were acting out and cheating on her, and look how, if you're getting your worth in the relationship from that, Ashlyn, then you're going to a well that's really dry, right?
And super deep.
Yeah, and super deep. Yeah, but it's good that you recognize that. Because your worth in your relationship and your value as a person in this relationship, it doesn't depend on him at all. Yeah,
and that's a super hard battle. And I guess I'm speaking for the betrayed, but for me as the addicted, just I guess as a human being with codependency, who had that modeled, that's a super hard thing and something I was mindless of. So the process of being able to in the moment mindfully acknowledge it and realize that it's coming on me like this huge wave, and then I need to like stand my ground and stop. That was so hard.
Yes.
That was so hard.
But Kobe's been really good since January and recognizing it and starting to see it more. He will say it. Like, he will kind of be, he'll not
this
kind
is
of.
codependent? Or,
yes, he will be very mindful of saying, I am feeling it right now. Like, step out of the room, come back, and say, this is what I'm feeling, and I'm not going to allow it to define the rest of my day, but I'm going to tell you how it makes me feel.
That's awesome. So you're coming to some answers here, which is, how do you work on this codependency? Right.
Man, so for me, and I want to obviously get your feedback on this, because the key chapter for me was talking about detachment in the book Codependent No More, because it literally was like her way, Melody Betty's her method of saying, this is an unhealthy conversation or situation or environment. I'm going to detach from this right now. And she said, sometimes that might be just saying, okay, I can't have this conversation anymore because it's gone sideways.
Right.
And she said, sometimes you might have to just completely leave the room.
Which you do sometimes.
Sometimes I do. And we, this was meant at no small consequence for both of us, because when Ashlyn was in shame and she was like, "Rrr," and I'm like, I'm stopping. And I would be yelling, I'm stopping. I'm not having this conversation. It was done. And she wasn't having any of that, because I just turned my back and like continue on with whatever I was doing. That hasn't happened. That's happened like maybe 2 or 3 times. But that was really, really hard to not bait, because I always took the bait. I always took the bait. So I was like, I'm going to detach. I'm not having this conversation. And one of the biggest clues of this was, for me, that has helped me from like a tool standpoint, is realizing that when Ashlyn goes to shame, I physically feel my shame coming on. And when I physically feel it, like just like I feel if I'm hungry, or if I'm thirsty, or if I've got to go to the toilet, those are all physical manifestations. But codependency was as well.
Right.
So that helped me to realize, okay, I'm starting to get like hot. My heart is racing, and I'm getting frustrated. Okay, I'm feeling codependence. I need to like take a step back.
Right. And
that's hard. That was so mindless of it for so long.
Right. You know, you said something that was really interesting, which is you wouldn't take the bait. And, you know, to be honest with you, most couples, they match each other's level of codependency in the relationship.
Okay.
That's why they get together, because they're equally as unhealthy. Now,
I'm done. No, just kidding. We're fixing it.
But one thing we'll do is, you know, I know where my wife's codependent, and so I know what buttons I can push to draw her in.
Yeah.
And so I know what bait I can give her to get her power. And so, you know, and same with you guys.
Yeah, totally.
You know, hey, if I shut down here, or if I amp it up, or if I throw this little jab out that will hit right on their shame here, boom, they've got you locked in, right?
Yeah.
And they got your power.
Yeah.
And so I think the mindfulness that you're talking about of like, look, I know that I give up my power in this area easily. So when I hear certain things like this, I'm going to be aware that codependency or that shame's going to come up.
Really good. Right? That's really good.
Yeah. But also I think for the partner, like, to understand, look, it's not productive to draw somebody into drama. Drama is a manifestation of codependency. I mean, it's communicating in a codependent way.
Okay.
That's what drama is. So to draw them into drama, I don't want to do that either, because that's not productive. So I'm not going to throw out little things of bait to that person, because we'll get nowhere with that. Right?
Like super quick.
Yeah. Yeah, like nowhere. You
like
just
0.2
start going in
seconds,
circles really fast.
Same fight over and over.
Over and over. That's no resolution.
That used to be our life.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
So
a good
long.
sign of codependency.
So long.
Yeah. you know, a lot of couples that come in, they come in and they're each a victim of the other person.
Totally.
And that's codependency. Is I'm waiting for them to change. They have my power, and once they change, I'll be okay. And I talked about that in one of my Friday Fives. But interdependency says, look, I can move forward and be happy regardless, and so I'm not a victim. So
that's so great.
Okay, so
go ahead.
Sorry, we had a question that popped up. It went away, but it was saying, what if you suspect that someone is codependent? What can you do to help them? Which is one of those tricky things.
Start calling them codependent. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, don't start pointing the finger saying that's a codependent response. Understand why they're codependent. Like if you recognize that person being codependent, back off a little bit and say, okay, what are they afraid of? And try to empathize and connect to that, rather than tell them not to be codependent. So why do they get so upset or so shut down over the slightest emotion that you have? Maybe they're really scared, and maybe you can hold that space for them a little bit, and help them work through that and process through that. Another thing is, if you suspect it, it's really helpful to get educated about what codependency is. And so like Codependent No More is a great book for it. There's also a few other books that are about not being codependent, like Bonds That Make Us Free is a really good one.
Cool.
Anything by the Arbinger Group is really good, that talks about being interdependent and not codependent. So like Anatomy of Peace, Leadership and Self-Deception, those type of books will help you learn about how not to be codependent.
Awesome.
So
very cool.
I feel like empathy is always the answer. Like but really,
right.
Like the more empathy we have for the people around us, the more I can.
Well,
feel
Ashlyn, so what really? If what is empathy? What's a synonym for empathy?
Connection.
What's a synonym for connection?
Love.
Boom, right?
It's the answer.
All you need is love. I mean, that's what it's all about, right?
That should be our song for this.
Yeah, there you go. But it is true. Love is what heals. Love it. And codependency is using somebody. It's not love. It's selfish. It's I need you. I have to have you so that I'm okay. Empathy is anything but that.
So, real quick, a question on this, just as we're wrapping up, Brandon. A couple they've gone sideways in a conversation. What's a simple tool that they can deploy if they notice, okay, we are in codependence and we're in the thick of it and nothing is productive anymore? What can they do?
Okay, so the most productive thing that they can do is own something about themselves. Okay, so that's the first thing. Because you know what? I want to draw you into this because I know that I could, and we'll get nowhere with that. And so I don't want to do that. Right? Or I'm trying to go to my victim because I don't want to be vulnerable with you right now. And if you could say one statement of honesty or vulnerability, that's really helpful. Another thing is to reflect it back to them in a very non-blaming way. Okay, so it's like, look, I can see that you're getting upset, or this seems really hard for you. I want to understand you, but it seems like you're kind of going off track here. Like I'm here for you, but so you help them get mindful that they're getting codependent, right? So I think those are the two main things.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Super good. Now, this is a very real one, and for me, it's just taken a lot of mindfulness. And in fact, even last night, Ash and I were having a conversation, and one word from Ashlyn just completely set me off to the point, like right on the edge of the knife of like giving into codependence and not. And so even in that moment, and I was already in shame, I had to just really be mindful, like, okay, this is real for me. And it was yeah.
Now
totally
that would have turned into like a 4-day fight.
Totally.
Right?
In the past, I'd be like, see ya.
Yeah, like walk away, shut down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She shuts down, I go to victim, I act out, she gets hurt, and it's just this wicked gerbil wheel.
If you both have that solid foundation of self-worth, you can stay interdependent and you don't get caught up in that codependency.
It's awesome.
So
glad that you're here to share this insight stuff with us, because honestly, this is I know for sure this is a huge undercurrent for so many couples. And
not the one even that struggle with what we struggle with. It's just
it's a human
part
thing
of relationships,
for sure.
right?
But especially for the addicted and the betrayed, this is like fuel for the fires of betrayal.
And I think this topic in 20 to 30 minutes,
doesn't do any justice.
It doesn't. No, I mean, there's so much more to this that we could talk about.
And maybe we'll do that.
And I think we should continue
in another episode.
Yeah.
So
all right.
Okay, guys, thanks for being here.
Can I say one thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, check out our website. We have one now. It's betrayedaddictedexpert.com. So I guess I'm betrayed and addicted.
Oh yeah.
But check it
Not
out.
a planned words intentionally.
BetrayedAddictedExpert.com.
A lot of good content there, and Brandon's worked on that.
And you can check out info on our workshops there.
Totally. We'll be posting more information on the workshops that'll be forthcoming.
Yeah, they're on the website, right? Ish.
They're going to be very soon.
Exactly.
Yes.
But guys, if you like this, please share this, and if nothing else, please just give us a review. Hop on your iTunes, your iPod, your podcast, app, and leave us a great review if you would. This would be pretty sweet because, again, the more reviews, the better. So thanks, guys.
See you guys.
See ya.